Hello survivors and welcome to another video. In this video we are going to be looking at two upcoming ascendables that are going to be this Magna that you see on the screen right now and this Lee right here. And the obvious thing that sticks out with these two characters is they are both human shields, and I have answered questions a lot of times in terms of I never really thought they would bring out ascendable characters, legacy ascendables from shields, just because it's quite the premium specialist skill. And if I assumed that the way they would do it, if they ever gave out a shield within free to play, it would be part of an event rather than be able to have 2, 3, as many shields as you want effectively, especially considering Lee is so widely available. He was in 5-star tokens for a very long time. He was also in Ascendance, and a lot of people would have got their hands on him just because they would have been going for someone like Rosa, for instance, when she was first released. So we're going to look at Lee first as a 5-star, and this is what he looks like. He had a rush called Deep Strike. It was very fast. It was 44 AP, deal 525% damage to one enemy. All teammates get 40% attack for one turn. Now the thing with this Lee was always you could potentially have 2 of him on a defense team and they could be rushing quite a lot, and it was actually a reasonable amount of damage. 525% was a reasonable amount of damage, and he could get a second turn rush just based on the fact that it was 44 AP. Now his base stats as a 5-star don't really mean too much because it doesn't really translate into too much as a 6-star. But if we look at him as a 6-star, as you can see, he has got 1,686 attack, 1,847 defense, and 1,820 HP. These stats are accurate based on the leaks. This isn't a prediction from me, this is just the leak stats. These can change, of course. His trait is strong and his role is tank, kind of what you would expect. That is what he's going to be as a 5-star. He's going to be like that as a 6-star. Now his adrenaline rush is the prediction from me. I'm going to keep the name as Deep Strike. I'm going to let the creative minds at Scopely come up with a name for the rush. I'll change the rush a little bit though. Deal 550% damage to one enemy. It's up from 525 just because 525 just doesn't look right. Seeing 525%, either 500% or 550%. I would not be surprised, however, if this was main damage. If it was changed to like 600 to 800 main damage, that would actually be better in my opinion. All teammates get 50% attack for 2 turns. That's up for 40% attack for 1 turn. Obviously, when a character goes from 5-star to 6-star, they do get a little bit of a boost. Little things change. Either the turns are increased or the buff itself sometimes is increased. And then they always have something else latched on. And for me, I'm going to go with up to 3 teammates gain 25% bonus HP, and the reason behind this, my thought process, is that bonus HP is bypassed by bleed, and if you know historically from the game, Lee had a bit of an issue when it came to getting bleed damage basically at one point, and this is sort of just fits in with the character profile that I've got in my head of Lee, but basically maybe a bit harsh, but I'm sorry. His active skill, I've gone with taunt and defense up. Now this is again fitting in with the fact that Lee was the first ever human shield, and the human shield is basically that character that stands in harm's way and protects the rest of the group, and that's what Lee was all about from the Telltale games. And the active skill just enhances that with the taunt. Obviously it's going to pull certain characters, up to 3 characters in this case, but certain characters would attack him and he'll give himself a defense boost to take less damage when they do attack him. So the initial cooldown is 3. I'm not sure what the initial cooldown is of Anna's and Romanov's, but it should be around the same as theirs, to be honest. I'm pretty sure it's around 3 or 2. And it says this character gains 40% defense and taunts up to 3 enemies for 1 turn. So it's just that basically that controlling factor. You could potentially take him on an attack team because of this. Shields on attack teams aren't too terrible, especially if you've got heavy damage dealers next to him. You can just sideline the defensive mods and just go all out attack on certain characters, and then Lee can be in there just to control characters with his taunt and defend, and obviously shield between those taunts, between the rushes of the other characters, and he can obviously work on a defense team. Now I think it's obviously great that they're doing a Telltale character. This is the best thing about it for me, is that it's a Telltale character. I did kind of think there would never be any other Telltale characters from legacy characters. This is great news for me. I love Telltale characters. I do hope more Telltale characters become 6-stars in the future. We'll have to wait and see. I hope new ones come out, if I'm honest. We still, in my opinion, need some from Season 4 that haven't really been given the light of day. Characters like AJ, for 100% need an AJ from the new Telltale series, 100%. So that's Lee, and that's just a little guesswork, a little prediction, just a bit of fun in terms of what I think he could turn out to be like. I'm guessing he's going to keep that specialist skill as a shield. It would make 100% no sense if they were to pick 2 shields specifically to be legacy ascendables and remove them. There's so many characters available. It's just going to make the community a bit annoyed. There's no upside to doing such a thing. The second character is going to be Magna, and it is the call to arms shield Magna, and we'll look at her as a 5-star, and she was a very, very good attacking shield just because she had the defense down on her rush. It was called Tip the Scales. It was 45 AR, so really fast, impair, and minus 60% defense to up to 3 enemies for 1 turn. All teammates get 60% attack for 1 turn. So you could obviously, even now, if you were to take that on an attack team with, say, a 6-star alpha, that combo would wreck. So as a 6-star, she could potentially be really, really strong as well. So obviously her 6-star is going to get buffed up just a little bit, but it is going to be a bit different as well on that rush. We'll look at her stats first, and again, like Lee, these are the leaked stats. I haven't predicted these myself. These could change. They sometimes have changed, but it's generally only changed if a character's gone from being Generation 1 to Generation 2. But it's 1,655 attack, 1,923 defense, and 1,762 HP. Trait alert, roll tank. Same dealio as the 5-star. Now, the Adrenaline Rush as the 5-star didn't do any damage, so that is quite high attack stat for someone who's not going to be doing any attack damage. Effectively, someone who's going to be shielding 95% of the time. We'll look at the Adrenaline Rush. I'm going to keep the name again as Tip the Scales, and the speed of this one is going to be 85 AR, just because it is very, very powerful. Even if we kept the 5-star version, it's very powerful. The 6-star version I've increased in certain areas, decreased in other areas, just to make it a bit more streamlined. Now it's going to be impair and minus 50% defense to all enemies for 1 turn. I think it's 60% defense as the 5-star, but the reason I changed it to 50% is just because that's what a lot of characters have, is minus 50% or plus 50%. The second part is all teammates get 50% attack for 2 turns instead of the 1 turn, and recover from bleed. I figure that bleed really doesn't really get recovered from a lot of people. Bleed is starting to become an issue on, you know, defense teams and attack teams, so potentially could be just that little bonus that doesn't really mean too much in terms of power, but it could be useful. There is obviously a hemorrhage character that's come out recently as 6 stars. We're probably going to see more hemorrhage characters in the future, so a little bit of a counter to that. It is on a shield. It is very slow AR speed, so I would still say this character is mainly good for an attack team, but still, just because it's a shield will always be good on defense teams. Now, the active skill I've gone with is AP gain and elusive. Now, the reason I chose this was because the other Magna, also a shield, has elusive, and I just kind of kept it in line. It's almost impossible to predict active skills. Now, the AP gain is just to make it a little bit, you know, interesting, because the potential characters that this Magna could be used with would be Donnie on defense teams, who has AP gain on his rush for characters, and also Michelle on attack teams. Magna could also be used with Michelle on attack teams, who also has AP gain on her active. So there's some potential like early rush teams that you could put together, especially with Michelle, well, especially with both of them, because they can both have fast characters with them as well, which means those 8% weapons, and you could just have a couple of potential like nice attack teams, get those rushes off like turn 2 just from using some actives. Again, assuming, I think it's a really safe assumption, I really hope it's a safe assumption, that this character is going to keep the human shield specialist skill. Just like I said with Lee, it would make no sense to select these characters as legacy ascendables and then remove their specialist skill. You could select anybody. So these are the 2 characters that I've come up with, Lee and Magna, in terms of what their 6-star rush, active and specialist skill are going to be like. What do you think? What are your thoughts on what their Adrenaline Rush and active skill combo could be? Have you got either of these characters? Obviously, I think Lee's going to be a bit more widespread. I would say if you want to get your hands on these characters, particularly Lee, you should be ascending 4-star strong characters to try and get him, because once he becomes ascendable, it will be much harder to get him in Ascendance. And the same thing can be said for within 5-star tokens, which he is still in. If you want to get your hands on him, pull your 5-star tokens and potentially get lucky. I have got Lee. I do not have Magna, but potentially now I'm going to have a shield, which I haven't had on one of my regions ever during the 6-star era. Now, it's unclear which characters are going to come out first, whether Magna and Lee are going to come out after Herschel and Maggie. That's a safe assumption because those characters were leaked a lot earlier, but we'll have to wait and see. There are 4 characters that are upcoming. It's going to be Maggie, Herschel, Lee, and Magna. But that's it in my video, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in, and as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.